Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, coming to you live from the deep woods of Western Georgia on this November 4th, 2025. I think one of the subjects that kind of freaks a lot of people out is the idea of divination. Tarot cards seem to scare people for some reason, and it shouldn't. But tonight we're going to talk with returning guest James Ferrera about divinatory practice and how to protect oneself using the invocation of angelic guides. That's tonight on Vestiges After Dark. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome again to tonight's episode of Vestiges After Dark. Once again, I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett. Jamie Wolf is on vacation, so she won't be with us tonight. But do not worry, we still have a fantastic show for you tonight on the subject of angelic invocation as it pertains to divinatory practice. So I think you got a good one, going to have a good one tonight, and you're going to have a really good time. That's coming up in hours 2 and 3. So make sure that you stick around for it. Okay. I think there's really not much that I have to announce, but I had so much fun last time with the Saturn that I think tonight's a liturgical libations night. So I went ahead and grabbed this fantastic bottle that I've been enjoying. This is one of my favorite Scotch, one of the best Scotches I've ever had, in my opinion. It's the Distiller's Edition of Lagavulin. It's kind of hard to find. Don't really see it around too much. So when I do see a bottle of it, I go ahead and I grab it because I might not see it again for a couple of years, which was the case. The last time I had a bottle of this was about 2 years ago, and that was from my private collection. So I might have purchased it probably quite a few years before that. So I haven't seen it around in a while, but I've noticed that people are drinking less alcohol these days, which is bringing the price of whiskey down. So I'm not complaining. Anyway, this is tonight's show, and I hope that we all have a good one. And just by the nose of this fantastic Scotch, it's just wonderful. And I know that this is a favorite of Father Chris Yates, who's joining us tonight from Australia. How are you doing tonight, Father? Have you had the Distiller's Edition?
I don't think I have. I've just put a bottle in the recycling of Lagavulin 16, which is I think pretty much pound for pound.
Everything every Scotch should be, right?
Yeah, it's the go-to, right? You know, it's it's always great. And even for people that aren't really into peaty whiskey, they can kind of cope with that, I think, because it's a bit gentler.
I think so too. I mean, I don't know if Jamie would agree. I think she finds Lagavulin to
might be a bit much for her. Yeah.
It's a little high in the iodine flavor, and I think that can sometimes throw some people off. If you don't,
which is what I like.
That's what I like too. I like that ocean taste, you know. And and this one is
You get that in Talisker as well, I think.
You do. Oh, I mean, all of the ones on the ocean have a version of it, but I would say that yes, Talisker and Lagavulin tend to have the strongest effect. It's more saline than peat, although the peat's present, of course. But it's more salty air kind of taste, and it's wonderful. This
like
one
to Lefroy, which is because it points the way it points the distillery.
Yes,
it's far less saline. I mean, obviously, it's a unique flavor.
It is. It's its own thing.
I like, but most people don't.
I love it. I always have a bottle of Lefroy. Lore is my favorite version of that one, and the 16-year-old is wonderful too if you can find it. That's also another one that's kind of hard to get. You pick it up when you see it.
Go to the distillery; they've got it.
Yeah, I imagine that. Yeah, I imagine.
I'll be very near there actually in December.
Then
I'll be able to see it from where I'm going to be. Yeah.
Oh, really? Are you going to Islay? Are you actually going to the?
I'm going to Northern Ireland. So.
Okay, you see it on the other side. Okay, well then you have to take a boat, but you can get there. I mean, you can do it.
Yeah, you can get there. Yeah. I might even swim there and get that festival,
Why not? I'd swim for Lagavulin, or Lefroy. But no, this is a 16-year-old, but it is more sherried. It's casked in a different in Oloroso sherry casks. And it has a higher concentration of that sherry flavor. So just picture the 16 with more sherry. So it's almost like if you took
a bit sweeter,
a little bit sweeter, but not enough to really completely cancel out that saline. It still has it. But it is almost like as if you put, the closest thing I could compare it to, it's not an exact match, but the closest thing I could compare it to is take a 16-year-old Lagavulin and marry it to a 15-year-old, no, actually an 18-year-old Bowmore. And you'd have some type of...
I've drunk a bit of Bowmore recently.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love Bowmore.
Which one do you like? What we get around here is typically the 12, the 15, the 18, which are the standards. And then I will occasionally pick up a bottle of 26.
I like the 12. Is the 15? That's the one that's done in
very sherried
casks. Yeah, sherry cask. So, yeah, I prefer the 12 to the 15, to be honest.
Try the 18. It almost tastes tropical. It has a tropical fruit kind of characteristic, and the orange is stronger in it. So if you like that, the fruitiness of Bowmore, it really comes out very nicely in the 18.
Well, it makes a very good, Bowmore goes well with Drambuie and dried orange.
Yes, it does. It sure does. Yeah, and the older the Bowmore gets, the older the age statement, the more orange you taste in it. So I had a 30 once, and I mean, it almost was like Grand Marnier. I'm not kidding. Yeah, it really was. Yeah. It was very strong. Not as thick and syrupy, but still very, very orange forward. Joining us from Tennessee, we have Brandon Milam tonight. How you doing tonight, Brandon?
I'm good. I have no idea what you and Father Chris just said, but I've had a Dr. Pepper this morning, so I'm good.
Okay. I don't know if there's much orange flavor in that, but there's something in that. I don't know what you call it, but cherry?
What is it like?
I think it's like a cherry, right? Dr. Pepper?
It could be like a 28 or 29 artificial flavors. It's great. It's great.
29 artificial flavors.
Something like that. It's good. It's good.
Okay. All right. Well, as long as you enjoy it, that's what matters, I mean, you drink what you like, Tracy says she likes Talisker too. That is one of the ones that we always have a few Taliskers in the house. I think we have an 18 in the collection. Maybe one or two of them, actually. I have to go up there and check. But we always have a Talisker around. Okay, so let's get started tonight with questions from the ether. What do you have for us tonight, Brandon? We got a lot of time, so hopefully they're good questions.
Hopefully. So if they're not, we have plenty more.
Okay.
But so for a Christian who affirms they know where they're going after death, being heaven, wouldn't that be more so the heaven gati of Buddhism rather than the kingdom of heaven?
Okay, so we got a bit of a metaphysical slash Buddhist question here.
Got a crossover here.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a crossover.
Can I just the quick religious answer?
Yeah,
especially to Protestants, is to quote the scriptures. Work out your salvation in fear and longing. In other words, do not presume. Do not presume. And it's not about, I'm not going to get into the whole, because you think works save you. No, it's because faith and works are inseparable. And if your faith is worth anything, then you'll do something for the gospel. So it's a tired old argument that you have with people. Nobody should presume their salvation. Now, none of that is to deny God's love and God's will that all men shall be saved. But being presumptuous generally in life, this is just a general life lesson, being presumptuous seldom leads to good fruit. But I'll let you, Bishop Brian, answer the metaphysical parts
of this. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is sort of, I guess, inspired by this season's discussion on annihilationism and how we've used the eschatologies of several different traditions to kind of piece together what one can expect in the afterlife, which I would say, and I would argue, that no one religion has the full answer to, but I think they all have parts of it. And it's not as though Christianity is incomplete with this. It's just that that's not its focus. Its focus is not so much to give you a roadmap of everything that one could encounter as soon as one dies. It's more about giving you the tools for salvation so that you don't need to really think too much or worry too much about all the other options that are out there. That's really, I think, the primary thing to take away from this. And I agree with everything Father Chris said about presumption. It's always a problem with Christians, I think, particularly the more evangelical they get, the more presumptuous they tend to be, the more arrogant they tend to be, and the more insufferable they become. And I would really try to encourage those of you who do adopt more of an evangelical sort of arrogant approach towards, Jesus is your own personal plaything. I'm going to suggest that maybe you take a step away from yourself for a little bit, have a little bit of self-awareness and realize just how off-putting that is to the rest of the world and how you're not doing anything. You're doing no favors for the gospel. If you really care about the gospel, that is perhaps the single worst way in which to share it, because it's just going to turn people off to every single aspect of it. If you really want them to read it, that's not the way. Okay, that's not the way. So consider that next time, and it really, humility is the goal here. Humility is the approach. And I mean, I think if you want to be Christ-like, there's no way to avoid humility. So let's not worry about that.
I think that's what attracts a lot of Western people to Buddhism.
Yeah.
And Eastern sort of religions is because they're much better at, it presents in a much more humble way, I think.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean it's true, of course, but humility is a true way. And so, I think you're right. Not just evangelicals, all Christians could learn
a lesson from this. Yeah. I'm being hard on the evangelicals, but yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think even Catholics can be just as bad, if not worse, in some cases, and particularly these days. But I would say other religions do tend to do humility better. I think part of it is there's no real command to be evangelical in other evangelize in other traditions. Islam's probably the only one that kind of feels a call to evangelism, and they've got their own little brand of it. But Eastern religions tend to not do that kind of thing. They don't. There's no message that needs to be shared with the world. It's just, you make it available. People will find it when they're ready for it. That's kind of the philosophy that they take with religion. And I think there's something to be said for that, for sure. I mean, that's definitely my approach towards it. I mean, I make it available. I make it very available, but I'm not going to go out there and shove it down people's throats. I'm not going to sit on the corner of a street, handing out pamphlets, and I'm not going to be telling people that I disagree with that they're going to hell just because I disagree with them. These are not approaches that one should take. But back to the question. So when we're talking about the Gati, if you remember in I don't remember, maybe it might have been both episodes we did on annihilationism. We were talking about some of this eschatology. And as I said before, we are piecing this together using different traditions to try to come up with a full picture, since no one tradition has the full picture. Buddhism, however, particularly the Vajrayana school of Buddhism, which is the Tibetan form of Buddhism, tends to have perhaps the most complete picture because they're the ones that have spent so much time studying it. They perform this ritual called death practice. They use various techniques to be able to sort of catch a glimpse. It's almost like near-death experience practice, you could call it, but it's a lot different than what some people in the more theosophical or New Age groups might consider to be those same experiences, because for Buddhism, the life immediately after this one is the most perilous of all. It's as perilous as it gets, and there's a great deal of risk. Buddhism teaches, at least Vajrayana teaches, that when we die, we immediately enter into this halfway state called the bardo, and in that we will be presented with not what we want to see, but everything that we must see. And it's usually that which we are the most incapable of facing. So our greatest fears, our greatest deficiencies, all become accentuated realities that must be overcome. It's sort of, I guess the Western equivalent here is the journey to the underworld that we see in Jungian psychology, which is, of course, a universal archetype. It's not just a Western one. It's just part of human nature. But the idea of one, the hero going down into the underworld to face a challenge and then rising triumphant. This is part of that archetype being played out in a very real, dynamic, and horrifying way. Actually, the bardo can be quite horrifying for those who are unprepared. So Buddhists prepare for it. They spend their lives, at least if they're serious about it, they spend their lives meditating to acquire a basic understanding. Now, there's other types of things that they can do that is more than I can talk about in this particular segment, but there are various things that one can do to hopefully recognize these challenges for what they are. And what it really amounts to is that these things are appearances of the mind. And then in that moment, one comes to realize that their entire existence has been nothing but an appearance. And then they see the emptiness of one's own self, that the concepts that we've held so dear to, the identities we've fought for, all are meaningless accidents of a greater state of consciousness that one could in the West apply to God or the divine, but ultimately it is not a self in the sense that we recognize it. Ego is dissolved, and whatever remains of the ego is literally consumed. If you ever ask Jamie Wolf about her near-death experience when she was hit by that motorcycle, she will tell you that one of the things that she experienced were these little dark creatures that were attacking her, even trying to eat her. This is a very common thing in the bardo that is referred to as, it's the wrathful Buddhas. And they're not there to terrify you. They're there to remove your attachments. And if you cannot prepare yourself and handle that experience, and I think few people in the West would be able to handle that well, then that's where things get complicated. So let's get to the question here, because after the bardo, one will eventually incarnate one of the six gati, according to Buddhist philosophy or theology, or cosmology, if you really want to get technical. It's more of a cosmology than anything else. What will happen is they will incarnate one of the six gati. So there's there's two heaven realms. That's the heaven realm and the demigod realm. And then there's two very physical realms, the one that we're most familiar with right now, the human realm and the animal realm. And then there's two hellish realms, which is the hungry ghost realm and then the hell realm. Now, this is not hell in the Sheol sense or Hades sense. This is not hell in the Christian Gehenna sense. This is hell in the sense of one's deepest fears, one's deepest horrors, one's deepest traumas being so being embraced so completely that it has become that person's identity in life, and so therefore it becomes their only identity in death. And so if a person lives a life of evil, which would be, maybe it's something as simple as self-centeredness and selfishness, self-interest, or something as severe as cruelty or, murderous intent, sociopathic tendencies, then these are the things that they become. Likewise, if a person lives a life of fear, then fear is what they become. If a person lives a life of love, however great that is, that's also what they become. But again, unless they can recognize that every one of these aspects is an appearance, not the true reality, then they will often become part of just another fiction. In other words, the mind just simply manufactures whatever the expectation is according to what Buddhists would call the karma of the individual. Now, karma is one of those very misunderstood concepts in the West, because we tend to think of karma as some kind of credit system where the more good things you do, the more the universe rewards you, and the more bad things you do, the more the universe tends to punish you. And some people will even look at it as, what goes around comes around. That's not exactly what karma is. Karma is more along the lines is the cultivation of one's reality. And so therefore, if you do if you cultivate pain and suffering, then you become those things in life. And I mean, eventually it does destroy you. Look at how a person who lives a very hard life, in a sense of, by hard, I mean a life of cruelty. Look at how it starts to affect even how they look. Their appearance changes. They become more and more dysfunctional as time goes on. That's karma. It's not that the universe is punishing them. It's that the universe is literally giving them what they are generating. Think of the universe, think of the cosmos, think of creation, to use a Christian term. Think of creation as God's massive Xerox machine. And it just literally it copies your intent. So the more that you put out into the universe of something of a negative nature or a positive nature, the more you become that very thing. That's karma. So if you cannot recognize the illusion of your own mind of appearances, then you become the appearances. That's exactly what you are right now, an identity that you've manufactured. But I guarantee you, if you look very deep within yourself, you're not going to be able to really find the source of this thing that you call I or me or whatever it is that you did refer to yourself as. There really isn't anything there of substance. Even your thoughts, where do they really come from? Are you really producing them? Or is it 99% of the time just random things that come into your head on its own? I mean, this is the monkey brain that people struggle with when they begin meditation. They can't quiet their minds. Well, if you were in control of your thoughts, you'd be able to just instantly turn that off, but you can't. You know why? Because these thoughts are coming from something else, something that isn't you. But because those thoughts create you, at least from the Buddhist perspective. And it is one that I maintain, and I think it is not contrary to Christian identity or the Christian worldview. It just adds another layer to it, another dimension that needs to be maybe somewhat explained for people that are not familiar with this Eastern type of process. Where does Christianity fit into this? And I promise you, this is part of the question, but because we have a little extra time tonight in this segment, I feel I can be a little more complete on this one. So let me talk about that for a minute. If you're looking at it from the Christian standpoint, we are, of course, wondering, well, we're working out our salvation, right? That was the very first thing Father Chris said tonight. working out our salvation, not presuming that we have it, but having to work it out. That's the church militant, right? But what is it that's being saved? Like, we've been asking this season, what is it that's annihilated? If annihilationism is true, then what is it that's being annihilated? Well, then we have to ask ourselves, well, what is it that's saved? And we will immediately say it's me, but we don't really know what me is, or I, or you, or whatever. We don't really know what that is. We just know it's an experience. It's something that has an experience, or something that has a capacity to experience. But the more you look at it, the more you realize that it's just basically an experience. It's not really an observer in the sense that we think it is. It's more so a passive thing that can sometimes gain a more active role, but oftentimes is at the mercy of the powers that be, and like a candle blowing in the wind. A leaf blowing in the wind. You don't even. You have no control. You just go wherever the wind blows you. So much of life is like that. How many of you have dreams that you would love to accomplish, and you've worked very hard for them and still can't attain them? Or maybe you didn't attain them the way you wanted to or thought you should have been able to. This is because largely the universe is outside of your scope of control, and that is because you're just part of the process. You're not the process. And that's, I think, some of the arrogance that we can sometimes feel, is that we tend to place more importance on ourselves than we really should, or we really are. I mean, and that is perhaps why Eastern philosophy is better at humility, because they're operating from a basis already that this is all an appearance, and that, we shouldn't put too much investment into it beyond that which is here for, which is to recognize that this is what must be done. So when we get to this question, is like these Christians that think that they know they're going to, they'll tell you, I know I'm going to heaven because I know who my Savior is. I know who Jesus is. I have a personal relationship with him. And then they're like, grandma's in heaven. I'm going to meet my whole family when I die, this kind of thing. The problem is that this is an appearance that is creating another appearance. There is nothing in Scripture that says that this is what's going to happen to you. There's nothing. This is not God coming down from parting the clouds and coming down from the sky and saying, "Here, this is what's going to happen to you." This is you making an assumption based upon what you want to be true. Even your concept of Jesus is nothing more than an idol that you've manufactured for yourself. I guarantee you, when you start asking the questions about what is Jesus to you, find it has very little resemblance in most people to the one that's in the Gospels. They've all made their own version of him, and that's the one they want to meet. And guess what? That's what the brain's best at, manufacturing your wants, or better yet, not so much your wants, but manufacturing what you cultivate. And what you cultivate usually is a product of whatever you tend to spend your time doing, or whatever your base nature is. And this is the karma system. Again, try to, just like in Christianity, we shouldn't look at God as a judge that issues out rewards and punishments. No more should Buddhists look at the cosmos as a karmic system that's issuing out rewards or punishments. It's just basically cause and effect. It's whatever you produce is what comes to you. In that sense, you become what you are. It's very simple. You become what you are. And so we want to be the best that we can be, but we want to be awake through it. That's the big caveat. I love this. I forget the name of the master. It was a Taoist master. It might come to me. I'll let you know if it does. There was a Taoist master that explained it this way. He said he had a dream that he was a butterfly that was flying all around, very happily flying everywhere. And then he woke up, and then he asked himself, am I the man having the dream of the butterfly, or is the butterfly now dreaming that he's a man? And you know what? Both are true. Both are true. He is the butterfly, and the butterfly is dreaming him. And from whatever side of the spectrum you're on, in terms of the experience of what we call reality, is going to determine which role you play in that particular moment. Now Christians don't think like this because, unfortunately, Christianity tends to take a somewhat, and it's gotten much worse in the last 500 years, but it's taken a very materialist approach towards spirituality. It's not surprising to me that the same people that gave us, the Christianity that we know today are the people that created the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment went in this very materialist direction. It's where we ended up with this postmodern reality we have now. It's the same people. It's like when people ask questions about, well, what about those Catholics with all their pagan symbols? Where did they adopted all these pagan symbols? Who do you think the pagans were? I mean, who do you think these Christians were? They were the pagans. Most of the Christians were converted pagans. Of course, they're going to take their cultural symbols with them. That didn't mean the church said, oh, let's steal all the pagan symbols. No, the pagans were the Christians, and the Christians were the pagans. I mean, that's just that's the way it was. Read your history books. But overall, again, from the Buddhist perspective, we manufacture that which we are. And so therefore our expectations can bleed through. So when a person asks, and I think this was actually you, right, Brandon, that asked this, is this more like the heaven Gati? It could be if they're lucky. If they're lucky, one could say that the psyche, that the mind, for Buddhist terms, will manufacture the appearance of whatever it is that is most conducive to that person's nature. So if that person cultivated, a Christian life on the surface, but without any depth, and was not ready for death and not prepared for it, then yeah, absolutely they could manufacture heaven. Now, the real question is, from the Christian vantage point over this, is that because I'm a person that does subscribe to the idea that the Gati, the Bardo, Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, the kingdom of heaven is what do all exist. And I think they're all all aspects of this thing we call reality. I don't see them as specific to, well, that's what Buddhists think and that's what Christians think, and I don't see conflict there. I think they all kind of work perfectly together, and surprisingly they fill in each other's gaps, which is what I like the most about it. It's almost like a puzzle that came together and said, oh, there's the picture now. You had the pieces I was missing. That's kind of how I look at it. And so there are pieces missing in the Christian eschatology, and that's because it only focuses on salvation, doesn't try to get into all the other possibilities. Buddhism doesn't have a salvation focus. Buddhism is only concerned with awakening, is waking up, is being able to recognize. Now, what happens after that? Well, that's where it becomes a mystery in Buddhism. They don't know. I think that's the part that we have in Christianity, is I think that there is an opportunity, and this is perhaps not the Gnosticism of the heresies of the early church, but the epignosis that St. Paul talks about, is that there is this awakening in Christ that occurs. And in that awakening, what is being saved is a true and complete ego, not this broken, fallen one that we're used to, but a true and complete ego. So I think it's kind of like, for Christians, you can almost have your cake and eat it too, because you could be like, yeah, I mean, you're empty of, now that you're fallen, you're empty of all true intrinsic reality. You're just an appearance now. You're just a shadow, a reflection of the glory of God that once was. But the beauty is that Christianity gives you an opportunity to get it back. It's not any longer something that's completely lost to you, and it's not something you have to do on your own. I mean, even Buddhism has options for that now. They have the Amitabha, right? They have Pure Land Buddhism that has almost like a savior figure in there, a Buddha that's there to help you, guide you through the process if you call out his name upon death. It's very interesting, very similar to Christianity in that sense, almost a Christ figure. It doesn't surprise me, because I think this is, again, Jesus reaching out in all of the various ways in which he must, knowing, of course, that, culture is going to be greater than anything. And if a person isn't raised with Christian values, well, they're not going to necessarily even find any interest in having them. But that doesn't mean that they're doomed. That just means that Christ has to reach them on at their level. And I think this is where he's doing that. So it's not surprising that there's even Buddhas that have the characteristics of Jesus. And I'm not going to go as far as to say that it is Jesus, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. I wouldn't be surprised. And that's, again, not for me to know, it's for them. I've found Christ the traditional way. So even though I have a very expansive philosophical foundation, I don't need any of that extra stuff. It's just nice to think about. It's nice to understand, and it gives me some hope for those that don't have the fortunate life that I've had to be able to find Christ the way I did. But anyway, so yeah, I would say there are many Christians that live a very marginal, selfish life. Okay, and if they think that just by virtue of believing that Jesus died on the cross for their sins, that they're all set now, I hate to break it to them. They are not all set. And that's when we start to get into, all of the other possibilities that we've talked about this season. Just go back and listen to the Annihilation episodes, and you'll have more than you need on all of that, because we talk about everything. We even talk about the traditional teachings of the church in those episodes, which will hopefully answer those questions for you. But so yeah, I think from a Buddhist perspective, and a Buddhist would definitely say that a Christian who maintains this would not be seeing any true heaven. They wouldn't recognize that as nirvana, nor would a Christian, or should a Christian, consider that to be the kingdom of heaven that Jesus is ushering in. It is absolutely an illusion of one's mind. And that's the dangerous thing of it, because we're deluded all our lives. We think we're so important, and the more famous we become, the more wealthy we become, the more significant we become, the more we elevate ourselves to the status of being the center of the universe. I mean, it's not philosophically healthy. It's not spiritually healthy. It's not theologically healthy. It's not even psychologically healthy. It's much greater to take into consideration all of the times Jesus reminds us that, those that will lose their life will save it. Those that try to save their life will lose it. There's meaning there. The meaning is that the more that we try to hold on and maintain the integrity of our fallen nature, the more we lose our salvation. Is exactly what that's saying. And to put it in Buddhist terms, well, the more attachments you maintain that you're attached to impermanent things that cause suffering, well, the more suffering that you're going to endure. And that will continue on indefinitely until you decide to give it up. The problem is, the more you hold on, the more you lose yourself in it, which makes it even more perilous. That's why the gati are different layers. See, Buddhism considers the human gati to be the most sacred, much more sacred than the heaven realm. And the reason for that is that in the heaven realm, everyone's so blissed out because they're so content in the illusion that they've generated that they don't care that it's not real. They wouldn't even consider. It doesn't matter because it feels just so good. And it might as well be for all eternity as far as they're concerned. It's so long. So, they're not going to be able to find enlightenment that way. They no reason to seek it. And then in those in hell, they're suffering too much. There's no way to seek it because the pain and suffering is so great that we can't even hope to have the peace of mind to be able to meditate and maybe awaken from it. So the suffering is too much, but they become absorbed in the suffering. So the only gati, the only state of reality in which one can attain enlightenment from a Buddhist perspective is the human realm, because it's the only one where we can have a perfect balance of just a little bit of pain, just a little bit of happiness, and a whole lot of stillness. And most of our lives, barring the outliers, is pretty neutral. You have your happy moments, you have your sad moments, but most of the time you're even keel. You don't even realize it. And that's the best state to be, because that's the middle way that leads to realization, because you're not suffering too much. So you can pay attention, and you're not so blessed out that you can pay attention. So this is again, this is Buddhist cosmology, not very Christian in its dialogue, but it does not necessarily contradict. It just fills in those gaps that we don't know. We don't know what purgatory is like. We don't know the process of where Sheol fits into all this, or what the fires of Gehenna are really all about. We don't really know. We can philosophize, but we don't really know. We can use allegories, and people have. I mean, Dante gave us a whole book of allegories about what that's like, but we don't really know. Buddhism doesn't like allegory. Buddhism likes pragmatism. And so Buddhism gives us a very pragmatic description based upon how we live our lives. We become what we cultivate. It's the most perfect thing. And it's not even a punishment. It's not like you're going to hell because you've been such a bad person. It's just you just become the reality that you are. That's it. Simple. So, in the human realm, we can make choices. We can be aware enough to make choices. We have these moments of lucidity. Most people don't use them. They prefer to just veg out watching their TVs or veg out, not paying attention, getting consumed by work, getting consumed by relationships, or politics is the big one now. That's the big distraction. But in reality, use your moments of lucidity to focus on what really matters, and that's waking up. That's awareness, and that's what Buddhism focuses on. That's the only path to if there is salvation in Buddhism, it's awareness that they would say is the way to get it. They don't have the benefit of Jesus, but I mean, Jesus really is an instrument for awareness when you really read the gospel. So, Brandon, I know that was your question. Do you feel that answers it? Is there something I'm missing? Is there more that you need to know?
That pretty much answered my question for me for the most part. The point of the question was, to my understanding, how you explained the Gati when we were at the retreat house last time was, if you're perceiving things beyond death, it's an illusion. So when Christians have the mindset that they're going to have Jesus running down the steps to hug them, or they're going to see their family, that since they're perceiving it, that's still an illusion.
Correct.
So that was kind of where my question was directed towards.
And the reason I hold this, now remember, I want to make sure that I make this clear. This is not an official teaching of the Catholic Church. Okay. This is the benefit of many, 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 many years of my own Buddhist practice and my study of multiple variations of philosophy, and many of which come from the East. And I have found a home in that. I've found much peace in that, and I found much truth in that. And so I share what I know from salvation as a bishop with kind of what I've experienced with everything outside of that experience, because just because I'm a bishop now doesn't invalidate everything that came before it. It actually confirms it for me. I'm not going to say that this is an official teaching, but I will say that this is what I understand to be true. And that is that, like we talked about, the soma, which is the body, dies, right? That disintegrates. That is the first thing that perishes, rigor mortis, and then decomposition. And guess what? The brain is part of the soma. All right. And the brain is the seat of consciousness. So there cannot be any experiential encounters beyond the soma until it is resurrected from the dead, which is why, in my estimation, the Jewish tradition of resurrection required this, and why Jesus actually salvation comes through that process. That it wasn't just about salvation. It wasn't just about being brought back to God. It was about literally coming back from the dead as we are, reconstituted into a physical form. Why would that be necessary if the material doesn't matter and your body doesn't matter? Of course your body matters. It's the temple of the Holy Spirit. But why would he need to resurrect it? Because you need your mind back to have the experience, to be able to experience reality. So I would say that all of these appearances of the psyche are just deep awarenesses, but not experiences. You don't experience in the way I try to explain this, because it's very hard, is that when you're dreaming, you don't know you're dreaming until you wake up and can then rationalize it with your conscious mind. You don't really, unless it's a lucid dream, which is a whole different thing. Let's just talk about standard dreams that most people have every night, okay? You don't know that they're happening. You're having an experience, but it's just a passive experience that is very elusive, so elusive that when you wake up, you barely can remember them half the time, okay? But if you do remember it, if you try to hold on, you need your conscious brain to do it. Otherwise, it's gone. It's gone. And that's what the psyche is without the brain. It's just an instinct. It doesn't have a conscious, logical center. And I really feel that this is why Christianity emphasized the resurrection of the dead, and why Jesus emphasizes the resurrection as central to his plan of salvation, because it brings back the fundamental, logical, rational awareness that we enjoy now, in a way that has both the physical connection as well as the incorporeal connection. I think that both are necessary. And I think when you look at the theology, it's very clear from the fathers of the church, the kingdom of heaven is not a spiritual existence. It's a spiritual and physical existence. It's heaven and earth. It's both together. And our body becomes one that can incarnate both equally in a perfect way, which is kind of what Jesus's body was after the resurrection too. How, he was physical. He could sit down and eat with them. They could touch him. Thomas proves that, but he could also pass through walls, or sometimes look like somebody that they didn't recognize, or in some of the, go ahead.
It also explains why the church places, so much emphasis, why the emphasis comes upon the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Theotokos, because, and I think a lot of people get this wrong. They think that somehow, a la Da Vinci Code, a sort of, longing for the divine feminine. No, yeah. it's emphasizing the incarnate nature of Christ. Mm-hmm. That God has blessed the bodily condition, that mm-hmm. he's elevated the human body to divinity, mm-hmm. And so that's why we place that emphasis on the Blessed Virgin Mary is actually because of the enormity of the incarnation. And I think the incarnation, certainly in my lifetime of public Christianity, the incarnation is downplayed. Yes, of course. I mean, all of these things are equally vital and feed back into one another. The cross, the resurrection. But I think we can place so much emphasis on that and on the sort of the personal experience of personal forgiveness for the sins I have committed that are on the cross. You see this a lot, especially in charismatic Christianity, mm-hmm. and it's not wrong, by the way. It's not wrong to say, of course, Jesus Christ on the cross dies for my sins, but that's not to say that Jesus Christ came only for me, yeah. But in order to sort of understand the enormity of that, of the cross and the resurrection, you first need to understand the incarnation, which is the ultimate act of humility. Mm-hmm. That God becomes flesh. So I think a lot of the things where people go wrong in thinking about God is bypassing we spoke about last week, but bypassing the enormity of the incarnation, and that's why Luke's gospel goes to great lengths to talk about this. That the Blessed Virgin Mary's yes is a real, genuine consent, and that we're all capable of imitating. That mm-hmm. we should all seek to be people that say yes to God's way, yeah. even though we original sin and personal sin pulls us away from that. So I think refocusing on the incarnation, if you think about the Hail Mary, a prayer that polarizes people, it really is the sort of the scriptural basis of this is Luke's gospel. The second half of it that is not in the gospel it follows. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. simply an acknowledgement of the truth that Jesus Christ is God, and therefore she gives birth to God. Not that she creates God,
right?
But she births the incarnate
God bearer. Is the Theotokos means God bearer, not God creator, God maker.
Exactly.
Brandon, I think the main thing here is that the reason why I have said that when we die, the first thing that the saved, the first thing anybody, honestly, saved or not, will experience is the resurrection of the dead. But I think all of the passive instinctual experiences of the psyche that takes place between their physical death and their own resurrection is going to be dreamlike. It'll be remembered in that moment as a dreamlike experience. They know something will have happened, but they will only be able to remember it passively. They won't be able to. It won't be like, oh well, now I'm doing this. It will feel like the dream state, and I think that's why Sheol is described that way as well. All right, so I said that we had a whole lot of time, and I think we took it. So let's get to the next question here. We got next week. Next week is understanding Catholicism, where we're going to be going over a whole bunch of questions on the nature of Catholic theology. So we'll probably get into this again next week. So stay tuned. All right. What's our next one?
So the next question comes from April. Why isn't Mary Magdalene such a prominent figure in the Jesus story?
Why is she such a prominent figure? Well, I mean, she is the ultimate story of conversion. Okay, that's the most significant thing. In fact, so significant is Mary Magdalene that she was actually given a special title by the church, the apostle to the apostles. That's a very profound thing, because the church is very much quick to emphasize that the apostles could only be men. But in this particular case, she sort of takes on that role. Jesus appears to her first. And we know from scripture that 7 demons had been cast out of her, which is incidentally where she became associated with being the prostitute that's converted. And I mean, that's a papal association. It wasn't something that I don't think the fathers of the church definitively said. It's never really, she's not really named. That prostitute isn't really named, but she's been conflated with that. And it really doesn't matter either way. We just know that having 7 demons was kind of an ancient way of saying that you were riddled with problems, and probably a lot of sin came out of that. And so the fact that she had them cast out of her through Jesus, and then became such a devout follower that Jesus saw fit to appear to her first after the resurrection is very, very significant. And then it was Mary Magdalene that led the women back to all the men and said, Jesus has risen from the dead, and they didn't believe them. They had to go see for themselves, right? Peter at least did. So this is part of why she's so significant. It is because, as being the first witness to the resurrection, she's the one that first shared it. And that is the ultimate good news. So she becomes the ultimate evangelist in this particular sense. Is that because that's why the gospel is referred to. The very word gospel means good news. What is the good news? It's not less so about Jesus dying for your sins and more so about what that actually produces, that the gates of heaven are open again, and we can choose to walk through them again because of that cross. So yeah, the cross is part of that good news, but the real good news is that there's a solution. And the solution's here and now. And Mary Magdalene is the first to share that it is true. That everything Jesus said was true. First one to say it. First one to see it. First one to witness it. Even above all the 12 apostles. Well, only 11 by that point, but eventually they replaced Judas. So that's why she's so important. Father, is there anything else you can think of about her?
Well, I mean, I think look, it's related. It's the idea that one of the motifs of her is they're trying to describe the most far off from redemption you could be. So it is to counteract the prideful notion that I'm so uniquely sinful that God's forgiveness might be for everybody else, but not for me, because I'm especially sinful. Like, I'm the most sinful. So Mary Magdalene is I'm trying to imagine how she would, what the contemporary equivalent of Mary Magdalene would be. You know, like the worst possible person you could imagine, like the person furthest away from redemption. That's what she's there to signify, to
represent. Yeah, that you could be this far gone and still, and salvation still for you.
Yeah. And also, you know, it feeds into something which we're less familiar with now, but certainly in the Judaism of Jesus' time, people were literally untouchable. You know, as in, if you touched them, you became ritually unclean, and therefore you had to go through a series of, you know, mikvah baths and all sorts of other things to get yourself. So, by the way, I mean, this is lost on people in the parable of the Good Samaritan, that if a Jewish priest touches or encounters a dead body, he's ritually unclean, and therefore, you know, can't perform the sacrifices at the temple. So, I mean, we can see how this is reversed in Christ. You know, Jesus comes and says, no, priests are going to be anointing the dead, right? Or the dying. So, but nevertheless, that, you know, so Mary Magdalene, the fact that Jesus embraces her, that he will touch her, is a sign that nobody's untouchable to God.
That's a good point.
You can't hide in your pride of thinking you're the worst person on earth, which is, think about it, is a very boastful.
It is. It's the terrible boast. It's the same kind of arrogance we were talking about before, only in the opposite direction, for the opposite reasons. But yeah, that's why. Okay, we can probably get to that last question. I think we've got a few minutes here.
All right, so the last question comes from Andrew. Who is the thinker we can look to tie together evolutionary science with Christianity?
I mean, there's plenty. I mean, even the popes themselves have talked about this. One that is often cited is the Jesuit priest, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And he was I guess you could say he was a paleontologist, wasn't he? And he discovered, if I recall, Homo erectus fossils. So a lot of his work actually involved the study of fossils, the fossil record, and the study of vestigial structures and how it applies. For him, the idea that evolution exists it was central to, representative of the actual power of God. He saw that as the salvific act in action, that the reason that evolution directs us back towards a state of perfection in a cosmos that is literally run by entropy. Everything here is breaking down. It's not getting better. And yet here we are. Evolution makes things better each time. Each generation gets a little bit better than the previous one. And it's working towards greater states, to use true physics terminology. If entropy is going from states of order to increasing states of disorder, then evolution is literally going to greater states of complexity from more simple forms of less simple complexities. And that shouldn't happen in an entropic universe, and yet here it is. So you could almost say that is the power of God, the power of creation, the power of salvation at work. That in a way, I think, and this is where I don't remember if he's the one that talked about this or where I got this from. For all I know, I came up with it myself. I don't even know. After you go through years and years and years of studying things, you forget where you learned them. You just know that they're in there somewhere. But when you read the book of Genesis, it's one thing that stands out about the story of Adam and Eve is their nakedness, and that they put on the animal skins to hide their nakedness. And I always saw that as an allegory for taking on these lower primate forms that we call our bodies. And then we have to cover that up because we're shameful of the fact that we're now this animal, that we're no longer this perfect being that we once were, and it's representative of the fall. And so I think for Teilhard de Chardin, he saw this as evolution bringing us slowly back to perfection, bringing us back away from these primate forms to the point that we will evolve to something much greater, something divine. And that's just one, but there's several others. And if you have more questions about that, we can maybe look deeper into it. Anyway, we're going to take our break here. When we come back with our guest tonight, James Ferrera, to talk about angelic invocation. Don't go away.
No chances to revive. Days are slip away sometimes when pressure holds too tight. Holy, I can make up my mind and override the fight. I've been patient, waiting for an answer, contemplating. Didn't get me any closer to the reason why I feel the need to do it
Welcome back, everyone, to the second hour of Vestiges After Dark. We're getting ready now to start tonight's topic on angelic invocation as it applies to the use of tarot or any kind of divinatory practice, I would assume, could be applied here, whatever your particular choice is. And you're going to learn all about it tonight. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, you guys are the ones that support this show. We don't take advertisements, so that doesn't help us much with the algorithm on YouTube. And we certainly don't talk about subjects that tend to be very worldly, so that doesn't help us out that much either. So you guys have to be the ones to promote the show. Get us out there. Share this broadcast. Tell people about it. And if you really like it, give us a donation. Support the church that pays for it, okay? Take care. Okay, our guest tonight, which I am very much looking forward to, is James Ferrera. He's a professional tarot reader whose empathic insight allows him to connect deeply with both the cards and his clients. Blending scholarship, intuition, and meditation, his approach brings balance between intellect and spirit. James earned his tarot and Reiki certifications from 22 Teaching School of Hermetic Science and Magical Arts in Los Angeles. He currently serves as a reader, faculty member, and event moderator at Tarot Arts in South Pasadena, and is a recurring guest reader at the Philosophical Research Society. He also hosts Tarot Talk Show podcasts. Outside the metaphysical world, James is an award-winning unit publicist in film and television with credits including Malignant, The Conjuring series, Annabelle, The Nun, Insidious Chapter 3, Sinister 2, and the Stephen King adaptations of The Boogeyman and Salem's Lot. Please welcome back to the show, James. How you doing tonight, James?
Doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic. And so happy to have a chance to spend some time with you. I felt terrible that my last trip to LA for The Conjuring 4, again, they put me on such tight, restrictive schedules that you literally fly in, then you have to go here and you got to go there and you barely have time to eat. So we definitely tried to get over to you, but there was just no way we could do it. But we wanted to see you so badly.
Yeah, I wanted to see you guys too, so you'll have to come out here another time without a motion picture agenda.
I think that's going to have to be necessary because, when you're on their time, they try to fit every little thing in. Well, you know what it's like. I mean, you're in the industry.
Yeah, no, of course, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can come out for the Tarot Festival next year.
That sounds great. Yeah, let me know when it is, and we'll try to make that happen because I would love to get back out there.
It'll be the first weekend in June and 2026, and we are lucky enough to be working with the Philosophical Research Society as one of our venues, and Tarot Arts as another venue. But yes, I think it's going to be bigger. I don't know if it'll be better than this year's was, but
well, it sounds fantastic either way. So yeah, we'll definitely try to do that. I'll talk to Tracy and see what our schedule is looking like for that. But
cool.
If not, then some other time, I'm sure we'll get out there. And yeah, we have to do it on our own terms. I think that's the only way. And of course, you're always welcome to come out here.
I would love that.
So let's talk about this. So in angelic invocation. So you utilize what you refer to as angelic guides, which with what I assume to be the intent to protect you through the divination process, maybe not so much from harm as much as it is to maybe perhaps guide the integrity of the readings. Would you say that that's a fair assessment, or does it go deeper than that?
Yeah, well, it does. It goes, I think, a little deeper as well, but not, the abyss deep.
Yeah.
I don't work with angel guides, and I don't invoke them in order uh, to seek protection. But like you said, as guardrails against my own infiltration of my perspective when I'm reading for somebody. And to be clear, I will give my advice, my personal advice during a reading if I feel that it's warranted, but I make a distinction that to my client that, listen, this is not in the cards. This is not from the message that I'm seeing. This is from my experience. And so I delineate that aspect of what I'm seeing, because when I'm reading, what I'm really looking for with the guides that I'm working with is to connect with the divine spirit, with the divine spark, and work with these angel guides as conduits to receive the messages that that my clients need to be able to hear, and that I need to be able to interpret and deliver in a way that they can understand it.
So it has a lot to do with sort of helping you to filter out your, I guess, presumptions, that you might have, or whatever you might imprint into the deck. I mean, I know that when I teach students and when they first get started with reading the tarot, one of the most common problems I see in the very beginning, and for some it can last a rather long time, I know it did for me until I really figured this part out, was that the tarot is like a wonderful mirror. It will more than likely and be more than happy to reflect back your greatest ambitions, your greatest wants and desires, as much as it will reflect your greatest fears, neither of which are necessarily the truth of the situation, just, what you've imprinted into it. And if you don't know how to separate that from the process, then that's kind of what ends up happening. So a lot of people give up and say, oh, this is just nonsense. It's like, yeah, it works, but it's not telling me what I need to hear. It just tells me what I want to hear, or it tells me what I'm afraid to hear. And then that's when we go through all of these various stages. So it sounds as though what you're doing here is you're using these guiding spiritual forces to sort of filter out the noise to get a more clear signal between you, the client, or the court, or if it is just you and the cards, so that you can get the clearest answer. Is that fair to say?
It's part of it. It's not the main aspect of what I'm doing. I suppose what I'm trying to do is more active when I'm invoking guides, and I want to explain that a little bit in a moment, like how I came to this realization of how I'm working with guides and,
Sure.
and what those guides are, because not everybody's guides are angelic guides. But it's more direct in that I'm actually seeking their intervention in a way to help draw down the message, to help connect me more powerfully with the divine, so that I am delivering the message that they need to hear. Almost, it's yes, part of that is removing my ego and my filter from it, but the more direct aspect of it is connect me so that I can see. And when I can see, then I can deliver, and help me to deliver it in a way that my client can understand. Because just me being able to understand and see the message and feel the message, because I work from a perspective, I am empathic, but I'm also clairsentient and clairaudient. So when I feel and see and or hear a message, I need to be able to deliver that to my client in a way that they can understand. I can see it and understand it, but I may not be able to articulate it in a way that it resonates for them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ask my guides to be able to help me deliver these messages in a way that my clients can understand, I'm really giving myself over to the divine process, or to the celestial side of things, to be able to act as a conduit, almost, if that makes sense.
It does.
I didn't know.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it reflects very much the ancient practices in China. If you look at some of the old iconography of, the classical golden age of Chinese philosophy, going back to the I Ching, and some of the old divinatory practices of using the tortoise shells. A lot of the imagery in art, you will see the practitioner, doing the divination or carrying out the divination, and then there would be all these spirits looking down on them. In a way, these are the spirits that are bringing the message, bridging the realm of heaven and earth, so that there can be a clear, resonant connection, so that both can communicate freely with each other. It invokes that for me when you were describing what you were just explaining.
It's interesting, and I that resonates for me, because I'm very visual. I'm a visual thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And so although we ascribe imagery to angels and other celestial forces, it's not necessarily, we tend to, I'm gonna stumble over this,
Anthropomorphize.
Anthropomorphize, thank you.
Uh-huh.
A lot of things that we don't understand what they really look like. And we don't really understand what angelic forces really look like, just like we don't understand what God really looks like, right? We have ideas in our head. They help us relate to that energy, right? But, and so as a visual thinker, I do see that sort of angel on my shoulder, or the guides peering down from above to kind of keep an eye on what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also hear messages. When I hear things, people ask me, as a clairsentient reader or a clairaudient reader, well, do you hear the whole message, or do you hear a sentence, or like, do you hear a voice? Is it male? Is it female? It's none of those things, actually. Sometimes I'll hear a word, or sometimes I hear something. It's not always distinguishable as English, but I know what it means. And so I sort of see that presence up here whispering to me when I maybe am not getting it or not communicating it. And then I'll hear something and it comes out, and it tends to resonate. So with the client. So I like that idea. I wanted to mention, like, sort of how I came to work with angelic guides, because I said that they're not the only type of guides that people work with. People work with ancestral guides, and people work with demonic guides. I don't. I don't advocate that, but I know that people do, right?
Mm-hmm.
They work with the Goetia, with the Solomonic Goetia, and believe that they can control those those powers, and maybe they can. I don't know. It's not something, especially with my history in the Conjuring universe, and you connect, we intersect in that realm.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something I want to play with. So even when I'm working with angelic guides, when I'm doing something that's more ritualistic outside of the immediate preparation that I do in opening my space and sanctifying my space for readings, I take great care in my intention, what I'm asking to work with, and how I create that space as a sanctified space to ensure that it's not opening, you know, doors to things I don't want to come through.
And that would be like the protective aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what scares people, I think, about tarot. They see it as doorway, and I think they're afraid that something dark could come through. We have a lot of clients sometimes that come to us and say that, you know, they didn't have any problems until they started playing with tarot cards, and then all of a sudden they think they have a demonic attachment. You wouldn't believe how many decks I have collected over the years because they end up giving their cursed decks to me, and I don't destroy them, and I've never had problems with them, but you know, I don't think it comes for the cards personally, but I think that definitely opening one's mind up to spiritual things, you know, are going to, like attracts like, right? So if you think a lot of dark thoughts, well, there's going to be a whole lot of dark things that find their way to you as soon as you open that door. It's not the tarot that does it. It's just you opening that part of yourself that makes you a little bit vulnerable. So I don't think someone like you, James, would have too much to worry about in terms of having to be protected. But, you know, it's always nice to know that, you know, you're clearing the way, right? You know, you're making it nice and smooth just in case.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, it doesn't hurt. And it's part of my practice. My practice is, you know, my practice is imbued with light, and I want to keep it light, and I want to keep, you know, I want to keep that light shining. So that's, you know, that's just part of what I do. And I understand that just you know, a lot of the ritual practice is similar ritual that can be used to invoke or conjure darkness, or conjure demons, bring things through that, you know, we don't want to bring through. So if I'm conducting a ritual that could be, you know, there's an element of it that is what flips it from white to black or light to dark, then I want to make very clear that I'm working in the light, you know?
Yeah, it makes sense. So how did you come to interact with these guys, like identify these guys? You mentioned that they're not all the same for everybody, and that some are not angelic. I think you are saying that you identified yours as being some type of angelic being. So how did you come to this relationship?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know if I can adequately answer it. Part of, you know, this idea of guides, or having guides and working with guides, was introduced to me through Naha Armady at 22 Teachings, who's one of my mentors. And she talked about her guides and, you know, calling on your guides. And I was a little lost in it first, because I thought, well, I don't know who my guides are. I don't know what guides are. I'm not really tapping into that, and I'm not connecting with it. So for a long time, I didn't have any connection with working with guides of any kind. But I tried to remain open to it. And then at some point, it just connected. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I knew the guides. I knew that I was working with guides, or that guides were coming to me, and I just knew like that I was working with angel guides, which was very strange for me because I've always felt that angels were like they were just like a cliche. Like we see angels portrayed in so many ways, like on pillows in Target and cherubs on candles, and like as almost a lowest common denominator of style. And I don't mean to if somebody really likes angels and they have them all over their house, I don't mean to say, you know, to cast any shade on that, but it just wasn't resonating for me as something deep and important and connecting. It struck me as something more pop culture like that I didn't connect with. So the idea that all of a sudden I felt an angelic presence was both profound and confusing and surprising to me when it first began to happen. So I can't explain it fully. That's part of the nature of it, I think. But I just understood that was who was coming to me, or what was coming to me, how it was presenting itself. Not how it was presenting itself, but what was presenting itself.
Do you find that they are representative to you in the same sense of what we know from the Judeo-Christian worldview, or do you think that there's something deeper than that even? Because certainly in Scripture, both Jewish Scripture and Christian Scripture, angels basically serve two primary functions: to be protective and to render messages, which is essentially both ways that you're experiencing them here. So it sounds as though it's almost like a guardian angel in the Catholic sense.
Yes and no. So sometimes I haven't identified fully my guardian angels. And if we're going to talk about, you know, different traditions, and also in Islamic tradition, there's a tradition of angels and angel messengers as well.
Yeah.
I mean, in all three of the Abrahamic religions, right? Yeah. But the angel, the idea of angels even predates that in earlier beliefs. I think that they're primordial in the same way, you know, that God is. These things have existed before time, outside of time. They continue to exist outside of the time that we live in and intersect with the time that we live in, if that makes sense. I hope I'm not getting a little too metaphysical, but
not for this audience. You're fine.
But when you're asking about, like, you know, a Judeo-Christian aspect of it and guardian angel aspect of it, my understanding and my approach to it is largely through that lens, my understanding of it. So yeah, but in terms of guardian angels, you know, there are different traditions. There are almost as many different interpretations and traditions as you know, there are people on the earth. But Agrippa said that, you know, Cornelius Agrippa said that every human has three guardian angels and one servant demon. Well, the servant demon can stay over there as far as I'm concerned. But the three guardian angels, whomever they may be, do I have one? Do I have three? Do they change throughout my life, you know, or are they lifetime guides, as some suggest? I don't know. I haven't identified them all, but I do know that, you know, I work with Uriel a lot, or Uriel, a lot, as an archangel that intersects with I believe that they're probably one of my guardians as well. But other angels come in and out of that divinatory space when I'm looking for guidance. And I have a lot of tools that I use and in my practice. So there's more of a what's the right way of saying this? Not long term, but there's a deeper ritualistic practice that is outside of the moment of preparing for divination or sanctifying a divinatory space for reading. That greater ritual space takes place, in my home or outside of my home, in my yard, and that connects me on a deeper level, almost like an anchor, right? I'm throwing the anchor overboard to keep me connected on a deeper level. And there are tools that I use for that as well. And then when I'm sanctifying my space, I have a ritual practice that I employ, and I use tools in that. Some of the tools that I use are crystals. Some of the tools that I use are cards or tea or a singing bowl. I brought a lot of these things here to share. If
that's beautiful.
A lepidolite angel. So crystal cards, but they're images. They're things that are not. They're helpful for me and my brain and the way I work and connecting and amplifying how I perform ritual or connect with angelic guides, but they're not necessary, right? All I need is me, ultimately, and my intention and the purity of that intention in order to be able to connect. I use these other things to help me do that, but they're not necessary. If I don't have them, it doesn't impede me from being able to continue with sanctifying that space, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I also just want to mention, we talk about invoking angelic spirits or angelic guides, and that was my choice for the title of this, right?
Right.
But I want to clarify something, because I'm not conjuring, I'm not invoking in the sense of commanding. And that may be part of the chaos magician in me, which we can talk about a little bit if you want to. But the understanding of tradition and the understanding of history and how things work in tradition is important. But being bound to that tradition, I find to be limiting and not in line with the purity of intent. So in that way, I refuse to invoke or command or conjure angelic spirits, because they're not my servants. I'm asking them to come into my space to give me guidance. And I'm making a request to them through prayer and ritual to help guide me in a way that empowers my client and helps me step out of the way if I need to, right? Or be in the way as the interpreter when I need to. So I just wanted to make that distinction as well.
No, I'm glad you did. I mean, I think, honestly, I think your title's fine. But I think also at the same time, words matter. And I think sometimes we get sloppy with semantics, and we take for granted that what we understand to be a particular usage might not be how someone else takes it, or even what would be academically the correct way. Academically, invocation is exactly what you're doing. Invocation is the request, the appeal to a higher force. Evocation would be more of the commanding of servitude, sort of like Enochian magic, for example, where angels become more like subservient to humans based upon the manipulation of these sigils or incantations, angelic names, that kind of thing, which I would never suggest that anyone gets involved in. But the evocation parts are problematic. The invocation is consistent with the way that you're describing it, which is not unlike how a Christian would invoke their own guardian angel or any of the archangels to aid them in a particular way. It's a common thing. St. Michael is obviously invoked. There's an invocation to St. Michael in the church, which is a minor exorcism, and incidentally, the only exorcism that the church authorizes the laity to use. So that's how powerful it is and how useful it is to ask for the assistance. And of course, the angels are there to help us. They enjoy, for lack of a better word, working with us because that's part of God's will, and serving God's will is their ultimate function. So it gives them, in our terms, something to do, But yeah, no, I think invocation is exactly consistent here. So, but I'm glad you made the distinction, because I think there are people out there that just hear these terms, they think they know what they mean, and it might sound to them that you're calling them down in some ritualistic magical practice, like I said, chaos magic or something, and forcing them to do your bidding. That I think comes from a lot of the grimoires and the lesser banishing ritual, pentagram, all this stuff where they, these are things that are used to, after you invoke a demon, and usually it's demons that are getting evoked. You evoke a demon, you make them a servant to you, and then you have to banish them because they won't leave. So the ritual practices are here to guide the person through every step of that process. But that would be true evocation in that sense. Again, not something I would recommend. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't recommend it either.
well, not with demons.
Not with demons.
But I do use the LBRP because, again, everything that I approach through light and through connecting with purity and with the divine and with divine intention. And so when I do an LBRP, or lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, or a greater or invoking ritual of the pentagram, or whatever, it's in alignment with God, and with making a safe space for me to work in, right? Although I may not be calling upon demons and then feeling the need to banish them, right? Because I just feel the need to banish them throughout my daily life. I'm not constantly thinking about banishing demons, but I do, when that idea comes into my mind, like, oh, is this a thin space where something can come through? No, it can't come through into my world, because I refuse to allow it to come through into my world. And I have the power, above and beside me, to help me hold those forces at bay, and I don't think they want to come in, because they're like, it's not a welcome space. right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I still want to create a safe and protected space, and those rituals, the LBRP is one of those things, and invoking the name of, different names of God to create a space of purity. That's part of my daily, like, my cleansing of my space where I'm working, where I'm reading, right? I do a Kabbalistic cross, I do an LBRP. do an invocation of the flame and lighting a candle as, you know, a representation of the spark of the divine. I have a procedure that I go through, you know, and then I do my prayers, and then what I'm asking for, declarations. I go through my other things, but everything that I do is with like, and I state this out loud as well, and with harm to none. Everything that I ever do when I'm doing ritual or concluding ritual, opening a space, closing a space, is and with harm to none. It's always the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't always feel that in my daily life.
You and me both.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not perfect. I wish I were. I'm not. And I never will be. But I can strive, you know, to be better. And part of that is the ritual that I do. The ritual that I do is part of encouraging me and reminding me to be better, to create space that is clear of polluted, the polluted part of my mind, right? The polluted part of what infringes on my daily life. To that's what I'm working to banish when I do an LBRP. I'm banishing that aspect, not any sort of demons that I've conjured, but just the negative aspects that I may bring into that space. And so that ritual helps me to create a clean and open space and to feel safer or more comfortable to call it. It's like cleaning my house before I have guests over, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to
Sure.
get my space, my divine space, clear and clean before I actually invite angels and God into it.
Yeah.
Even though they're like, you know, almost any guest that comes into my house is like, I don't care what your house looks like.
Yeah.
But I care.
You care. Sure. You feel it, right? You know, this is very
Yeah.
consistent with Eastern philosophical thought. It just occurred to me because we've been talking a lot this season about Buddhism and how it applies or where it can fit into some of the places that Christianity sort of doesn't necessarily follow through with as well. And so there's a lot of gaps, I think. Both sides have their own gaps that I think feel very well with, if you bring them together. It's two different pieces of the puzzle that, you know, you get the full picture when you actually apply them. And one of the ways in which Buddhists think, you know, as far as the Buddhist philosophy goes, is that everything is an appearance of the mind. We were talking about a little bit about that in the first hour. And, you know, if that's true, and I do think it is, then that's where all that darkness comes from. Because, you know, as you just admitted, and I do too, you know, all of us are not perfect. We will have unkind thoughts, and Christians will refer to this as sinful nature. And that is all in here, which means that this is the projector for all of it out here. And therefore, where do all these dark forces come from? Well, from in here. We're projecting it out and manifesting it literally out of our own consciousness. I mean, that's literally what the devil is in Judaism. It's not a creature like it is in Christianity. It's the proclivity of man to do wrong, and that is called the Yetzer Hara. But it's not a person. It's not a being. It's not even a fallen angel. It's literally just the parts of yourself that are self-interested and do the wrong thing. That can take on a life of its own. And as you know from chaos magic in the Western mystery tradition, thought forms are something to contend with. They develop a consciousness of their own, and they are projections of ourselves that become fully sentient and external in a way, can affect the external world. So this is why it's so important to do what you're describing.
And also, as much as there are projections, which I agree with, they're also magnets, right?
Yeah.
When we create these things and we manifest them, in a way, it's almost like a golem, right? You know, we're creating. We can project and manifest something out of nothing, but when we create those things, when we project that negative energy, we also draw that negative energy back into us. It doesn't project out of us and leave us and exist over here.
Right.
It remains a duality of, you know, and magnifies and grows within us as it grows without us. I have a friend of mine who I love dearly, and I still have a lot of hope for her. Maybe she might be watching this, who knows? Who got very excited when she learned the work that I was doing, and I'm gonna use the word and hope it doesn't trigger too many people, because I don't think it's a bad word, but she practices witchcraft, but there are different types of witchcraft, right? There's Glenda, and there's, you know, the Wicked Witch of the West. So, sure. And it's a we laugh, but it's a real representation of what witchcraft, contemporary witchcraft, really is, right?
Yeah.
It's also, but anyway, without going down that road, maybe we can do that next year. She practices witchcraft, but she practices baneful witchcraft, and she practices left path magic. And I've told her, you know, she does curses and and I've told her a million times, I'm like, why are you doing this? Whatever you're trying to inflict on somebody else, regardless of your level of success, and I hope it's not, regardless of who they may be, it's coming back to you. It's infecting you. It's poisoning you. It doesn't leave you. You can project it out, but it grows within you. It's that magnet, right? And so I believe when we project good and we project light, that is what grows and magnifies within us. And I will also suggest, for people who may be listening who don't feel it and may feel that is inauthentic when they do that because they're really angry or mad or filled with hate for somebody, and so to say something positive or to put or project positive hopes or thoughts out to them doesn't resonate as authentic, that doesn't matter. You can, putting it out there is like planting a seed, and it grows. So whether it's baleful or, you know, or baneful or dark, or whether it's, you know, filled with hopes of harm to none, right? And goodness, and look, we don't have to hope for goodness for people we don't like necessarily, right?
Right.
Just saying no harm. That's powerful. That's power. It's a powerful projection. And like I said, when we project, it grows inside of us. It's like, you know, Hermes Trismegistus, when he said, as above and so below, right? What is above is divinity that we strive to know and to emulate. We can never really reach in this lifetime, but we keep trying. And what is below us, the material world, what exists around us. But the idea of what is above, as above and so below, is not to draw down what is above into this, you know, into this material realm. As we rise past it into the divine realm, it's not passing each other. It's drawing these things, two things together within us. What is above within us and what is below within us, to bring these two things together into a whole. And that is the idea of that projection and how it magnifies within us. we can't escape it.
I like how you describe that there, and it's profoundly accurate because you're right. I mean, the whole thing, I guess, is the Wiccan creed, to harm none, right? It's part of their, and if you do practice something of a black magic nature, then it comes back to you 3 times. It can, some traditions say 8 or 9, I think. It can get really out there, and it's just like you said, we don't, just because we project out doesn't mean it leaves us. I think that's the most profound thing you said about it and that's what I think people do think, is that they, and look, you don't have to be a witch to still have to follow the same rules of the cosmos that, witches do. When we go out there and just do mean things, cruel things in the most mundane of ways, that's an evil that doesn't leave you either. You can harm other people financially, emotionally, sexually. I mean, you can abuse people. In the end, yeah, you hurt them, but in the end, all that comes back and ends up destroying you in the same exact way. Is that Pookie, by the way? Is that Pookie right there?
Yeah, this is Pookie.
Haven't seen Pookie in so long. There he is. Look at it.
Yeah, he doesn't like camera lenses. It's very funny.
Oh, that is funny. Oh, I love that cat. It's a great cat.
Yeah.
You got Pookie in Transylvania, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a true Transylvanian kitty right there.
He is from a little village called Krish, which is just a couple of miles from Sigishwara, which is the birthplace of Vlad Tepes, who is also known as Vlad the Impaler, and was Bram Stoker's model for Count Dracula.
That was during the filming of The Nun, right? When you
yes,
found her.
Him.
Yeah. Sorry, him. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, and then I brought him to Atlanta, and you got to meet him on The Conjuring 3, and did a blessing.
Yeah, and as soon as I came through the door, he jumped right on my shoulders. I remember. He was very excited. Oh, that was a great cat. It's great. That's a great cat. Really a great cat. But yeah, what I want to say, and I want to get into this a little bit more in the third hour, is that I know that there are people out there that want to get in or involved in some type of spiritual practice, regardless of what it is. It might be divination for some. It could even be witchcraft for others. We've had discussions of witchcraft we've had witches on this show several times, in fact. Some good friends of mine, in fact. And, we've talked about some of these things, and there are obviously going to be people that is a spirituality that resonates with them. I'm not a person that says, oh, you can't do that. That's wrong. That's against God. I don't believe that, for one thing, and second of all, I would never do that even if I did believe it, because I feel that people have to find their own path, and I do think that paths don't necessarily or aren't necessarily things that you choose, but are rather things that find you and choose you and bring you into them. I really do feel this way. I don't think I've ever chosen any spiritual practice I've ever done. I think it's always come to me. It's always reached out to me, and I follow it because I'm a curious person, and I enjoy learning these things and experiencing these things. But for people that are out there that are looking to maybe get into some of these practices, I think it is important for them to understand and know how to develop their own relationship with whatever guides or spiritual forces that are available to them that can protect them. So when we come back here, we're going to ask James that very question and hopefully give you all some insight as to how to proceed in your own spiritual work, whatever it might be. Okay? Don't go away. We'll be back after this.
Show the way. Yeah, I was a heartbeat with no sound till you came around. Yeah, you showed me colors, light in the darkness. You were the only thing I needed. Then we got older, but we stayed the same. Swear that we never lost the flame. No. walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Feel like a dynamite, ready to explode right up in the sky. I need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. From town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.
Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of Vestiges After Dark. It's been an exciting conversation so far, talking about these angelic forces, spiritual forces that can guide us through the spiritual work that we do. In this case, mostly divination that we've been referring to, but they can be applied in multiple ways. It's important to have a relationship with the divine in some way, and I think this is one way in which that can be achieved. When we come back here, we'll be asking James about how you yourself can develop this relationship, at least according to your own sensibilities. I'm sure Father Chris and Brandon Milam have some questions as well. And of course, you might have some as well. You can call into the show at 207-544-1983 if you've got a question for our guest tonight, James. 207-544-1983. It's been a bit of a quiet chat this evening, but if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat room, and Father Chris and Brandon will bring them to James's attention, and we'll see what he has to say about it. But yeah, it's been a great one so far. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment. I think the single greatest challenge to anybody embarking on a spiritual journey, whether it be one that is more metaphysical, like what we're describing here tonight, or one that is more traditional, be it, Christian, Catholic, Jewish, or whatever your particular Buddhist, whatever your spiritual path might be. One of the challenges I think we always must face is when and how to discern an authentic spiritual experience from one that is just the mind deluding itself, our imagination taking on a life of its own, because it is just that powerful. Believe me, all those projections we were talking about in the last hour, projections of evil that, become manifestations of one's mind in the form of tulpas, thought forms, egregores, can also project inward too and convince you that they're real when they're not. So, James, this is a two-part question, and then we can see what the rest of the audience has and the rest in our panel here tonight, what questions they might have for you. But I would like to know, for the sake of the audience, how do they develop this relationship for themselves, and how do they discern an authentic guide from maybe some imaginary part of themselves that feels real but is actually leading them astray? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important question, and it's a tricky one to answer, because there's not really the perfect answer to that, right?
Right.
So I think that there are components that can help people make that discernment, in the same way that I can give you a recipe and I can give you all the ingredients and the instructions. It doesn't mean that you're going to make the dish the same way I do. You might improve on it. You might make it worse than I do, right?
Right.
Or whatever. But you have the pieces. Hold on just a second. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
He's coughing.
Oh, my cat's been coughing too. I think there's something going around that they're catching.
Yeah, it'll pass here in a second, but
Okay.
I think in part it was probably just because he was sitting there on my shoulder like that so much. No, I think he has a hairball.
Well, they come and go, don't they? Part
He
of
doesn't
cat
normally
ownership.
get them.
Really?
Yeah. No, not normally. Okay. Sorry. A
No,
little
you're fine.
distracted there.
You're fine.
Can you bear with me just one moment?
Yeah, sure.
My apologies.
Father Chris, what do you think about discernment in terms of from the Christian vantage point? How would you advise a person, a Christian, how to tell the difference between their own self-delusion and God or an angel, their guardian angels? How would they be able to tell the difference?
This is quite common in parish life. I think that I would. It would depend on if we're talking. I assume you mean a genuine person, somebody that's really genuinely trying to figure this
Sure,
stuff out.
you're very genuine, very always at church,
Sure.
part of your community.
Because obviously
Yeah.
A lot of the time, people just use that as a power play, right? So,
Oh, sure.
So accepting it's genuine. I've said it on the show before. What we have to do, personal experience is essentially anecdote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't dismiss that. If you like, the vision of the church that we describe, the traditional, vision of the church is from the Latin traditio. That's which has been handed on from age to age. So it has its origin in the faith once revealed to the saints, and then it's been handed on over the years, and there's some winnowing and that goes on in that. And it's not a simple copy and paste. Each age interacts with that revelation and passes that on to the next generation. God is perfect, and therefore God does not change his mind, because we are imperfect, which is why we need to change our mind. In fact, the first words in the gospel, metanoete, allow your mind to be changed. But God is perfect. So I would say our anecdotal experience has to be weighed against the revelation of the perfect God through the ages. Therefore, we should look for previous experiences of this revealed in the lives of the saints. That's why we study the lives of the saints, right? Mm-hmm. If you say, actually, I've had a vision of an interior castle, inside me, then you go, well, you might want to read some Saint Teresa of Avila, and we could say this is a consistent revelation. This has happened before, and it's based upon solid foundations, and we might want to explore that. Now, that does not necessarily mean, like the life of Saint Teresa of Avila, it becomes something which can be promoted throughout the whole church. It could just be a blessing for you and your own life. But what we can definitely say is if your anecdotal experience of what God is telling you is completely opposed to what God has revealed as his will through the ages, then probably it's not God speaking to you. So as traditional Christians, we would weigh that against the scriptures, the Bible, against the lives of the saints, against the teachings of the magisterium of the church, documents that have been put out. And the good news is, and what I'd encourage people to do, is to say, there's loads of this material. Just go on the Holy See's website, for example, the Vatican website, and you can read every encyclical that's known, that's been issued by a pope. And that's just one source of material. There are so many sources of material to test whether your experience is something which, is part of a noble tradition, something that you can learn more from, or perhaps something which, if it goes against what the consistent revelation of God through the church is, something which you might want to place less emphasis on in your life.
That's a good answer. So, James, I'm not sure how much of that you were able to catch, but I think you saw most of it. I asked Father Chris the same question, only what would how would a Christian discern, that this is an angel talking to them, a God speaking to them, versus, because there are a lot of people that believe this, particularly in like the charismatic movements. There's people that believe that the Holy Spirit's revealing something, and then it turns out to be a lot of wild stuff. We see this in cults, even people claiming that God's speaking to them, and then they go and lead whole groups of people astray, even to the point of suicide, as we've seen in some places. So clearly, unfortunately, yeah. So clearly, we can be led astray by these experiences. They can feel very real. And I'm not going to say like David Koresh or all these people, were necessarily lying. Maybe some of them were. Maybe he was. I don't know. But I would venture to guess, like Heaven's Gate, for example. I think they really believed. I think he really believed in what he was teaching. I don't think he was leading these people astray. Yeah. So how do you just, from your vantage point, how do you discern it, and how would you guide other people to make that determination?
I really like what Father Chris had to say about the noble tradition, and I think that that's an important consideration. It's not the first thing that I go to, but I don't come at all of this from the same perspective that you guys are. Meaning I'm not working the church and the tenets of the church daily as my occupation as well. But the noble tradition, I think that's an important part of it, to understand what other people's experiences are and what has been potentially validated by spiritual leaders. But for me, it's, when I go back to that analogy of the recipe, right? There's like certain ingredients, and then I have to measure at the end, when I've put them all together, did it come out right? And those ingredients are things like humility. And where is my humility in this? Am I absolutely certain, or is there room for error? Might I be wrong? How can I be right if I don't entertain the idea that I might be wrong, right, in my perception? I think that that's an important thing to have, an important component. I think another important component is our purity of intent. So now I'm talking about, working with guides, intentionally asking them for help. But if you have an experience that is outside of imploring help for guidance, then that's something to measure as well. Like, where are you when that came through? Is there a purity that you have in that? We're not pure. We're not wholly pure, but it's the purity of your intent that is important, right? Mm-hmm. I can have purity of intent and still be a polluted soul. I think that it's important as well, part of when I'm asking for guidance, that the way that I prepare and cleanse my space in asking for that guidance, how I open it and balance. These are all things that help me get out of my way to understand what I'm seeing or hearing, or the messages that are coming through. I don't know if that entirely makes sense, but if I have humility, being open to maybe not being right, which I think is important. If I have a purity of intent, if I clear my space, if I do my breathing, if I get my mind in the right space, if I get my body in the right space, right? When I do readings, when I go into doing this work, it's important for me to eat cleanly, to be more pure, of not to drink alcohol within a certain period of time or do any kinds of drugs. Not that I'm doing drugs, but I take pain medication sometimes. So just having a space that is where my body is clean and matches the intent that I'm trying to come at with my mind. I think that these are all important things to take into consideration in understanding whether what's coming through is authentic or not. Because how can you know if it's authentic if your mind is polluted?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it's already confused? So you have to kind of get out of your own way. And then you have to be able to, part of that humility or understanding that you're not right is there's no answer that says you can do this and you'll know for sure. So, how does the presence feel? Does it feel right? If it doesn't feel right, if something feels kind of off, then it's probably off, And if it's you that's off and not the divine presence or whatever that's in your sphere, if it's a pure presence that's in your sphere and it still doesn't feel right, then you're not right. So if it doesn't feel right, step back. That's what I would say. Pay attention. This is going to sound a little woo and new agey, but vibrations, right? I feel a resonance. I feel like a physical vibration of space and an enveloping warmth when it just, everything just kind of feels good. I don't know if that really helps to answer the question.
No, I think it does. And I don't think it's actually too far from the kind of mindset that Father Chris was talking about either. Weighing it against, obviously some of these metaphysical traditions don't have a scripture to weigh against, a magisterium to weigh against, some kind of authority to weigh against. So it's going to differ in that regard. But what is weighing against these things? What is that ultimately? It is a type of humility. It's a type of surrender to something greater than yourself, to get out of your own way for the purposes of objectivity, in the sense that you're not going to imprint, again, wants or feelings into or fears into the scenario. You want a clear understanding, and even if it's something that you really don't want to hear, you're willing to receive it anyway. And I think having purity of intent, I'm saying that's certainly what the saints did. And perhaps that's how they were able to have some of these profound spiritual experiences, is that their intents were so pure, that they were so selfless in their pursuit. They weren't doing these things for self-serving motivations. They were doing them to align themselves to a higher purpose. They would say align themselves with the will of God, but ultimately it's kind of getting into the same territory here. So I think I do get it. I think that makes sense, and I think it is meaningful. So how would you then apply that to a person who wants to then begin? Let's say they buy their first tarot deck and they're starting to learn all about it, and they've studied and they're ready to do their first reading. What can they do to find the kind of spiritual aid that you're describing? What should be their next step?
So this is from my experience and my practice, right? Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would say is, whatever I say, if something works for them or you, take it. And if it doesn't work, discard it.
That's very Buddhist of you, by the way. That's very Buddhist of you. Well, that's exactly what he said.
Part of the chaos magic.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's part of that.
Yeah.
Using what works. Don't try and force a square peg into a round hole, right? So that being said, what I would suggest is, if you if there are two different things, reading for somebody else and reading for yourself. It's a lot easier to talk about reading for somebody else, right? So I'm going to do that first. Reading for somebody else, make sure, first of all, examine and understand what you're doing for them. You're not really a part of it other than a conduit. That's why I call in the guides that I call in, because I want to connect to what needs to come through. And so understand that you're not, your ego isn't a part of it. Like your advice, it's not the most important thing. Your lens is important. How you interpret what you see, your intuition, letting your intuition guide you, that's important. That's part of it. People come because you have a way of delivering a message, but you aren't the message, right? So that's one thing to understand first. Then I would say, creating some sort of ritual around it that works for you. When I say ritual, I know that maybe ritual is a trigger word for some people, but what I mean by that is simply have the way that you do things, figure out what they are and do them the same way every time. That is ritual, right? So making sure that your space is clear and clean, that your intent is pure, and and you can do these things by a couple of things that I've already talked about, making sure that your body is pure, making sure that your mind is clear and your mind is pure. Breathing exercises are really, really helpful for that. It seems so simple, but it's important. You can just rather than timing it, you can say, I'm going to do 5 deep breaths in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and breathe out for a count of 4. When you're breathing in, you're thinking about what it is that you're trying to achieve or how you're trying to achieve it. And then when you breathe out, you're letting go of that and giving space for whatever needs to come through from the divine, right? To come through, which might not be what you expect or what you think. So I think that those things are the most important things: the purity of body, purity, which is your temple, preceding the purity of mind, which is your clarity, and supporting your purity of soul, which is your connection.
Okay. That's great answer again. Brandon, do you see any questions in the chat that you would like to present? I don't know if there have been any. I haven't been watching the chat too closely this show. And Jamie's not here, so I'm hoping that you're catching them if there are any.
Yeah. So I have a few questions of my own, but there is one in the chat. It's from April. What is a chaos magician and or chaos magic?
So I am probably not going to define this very well since I'm not an adept of chaos magic, but my understanding of chaos magic and how I employ it as a ritual magician in the Western mystery tradition is I take what works and I leave what doesn't. And what works for me on one day may not work for me on the next day. And so instead of trying to force that square peg into the round hole, I figure out where's the square hole or where's the round peg. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like what works for me in this moment, what works for me in this day, but still aligns with the basic tenets of my beliefs and my practice. And yeah.
So it's almost like chaos theory applied towards spiritual practice in a sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what my magical practice is and what the tradition is that I've grown up in. Magic may not most of the time, when I say magic, people think of illusionists,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
David Copperfield, Doug Henning, people like that. I'm dating myself, but David Blaine. But they think of, illusionists or they think of magic with a K as being something dark. And what it really is a different word for an alignment that has its roots in Christianity, and many of its practices in Christianity, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a Christian practice. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But it is a spiritual practice, and it is aligned with the greater good and the highest power.
Okay. Brandon, you said you had some questions of your own?
Yeah, I had two. The first one, are there any particular English? Are there any particular tools, such as like tarot or scrying, that you believe angels are more responsive through?
That's a really great question. I don't believe that there's one over another that they're more likely to connect to. I think it's the intent of the practitioner, right? It's the practitioner that the angels are working with. And so what the practitioner may be working through, so for me, my main practice is through tarot and sometimes intersects with oracle work, right? But I work with other practices like scrying and casting, and I've recently been intrigued by basket divination, which is something I learned about in Oxford earlier this year. So there are all kinds of divinatory practices out there that I wasn't aware of, and I'm still not aware of, and hard to imagine. It's a cultural, right? We approach these things culturally, and so I think that the simple answer is no. I don't think that there is one over another that they connect to, but I do think that it's through the practitioner that they connect. So if the practitioner works more resolutely through scrying, then I think it's important that their purity of intent and guidance is aligned with that practice, if that makes sense. It's with the practitioner and not with the practice.
That does make sense to me. And it's consistent with anything I've ever experienced. I mean, even right down to, standard traditional Christian practice. I mean, it always, you can have all the embellishments and all of the wonders of a grand cathedral. And I'm not going to say that doesn't help one to really get into the moment. But I mean, ultimately, it still comes down to you and God. And it's always going to be through you that experience occurs. It's not going to be through a building or an object or an icon or something. It's going to be through you. That's what makes the sacraments so sacred, is because they are interactions with you, with the divine. It's not, I mean, the church is the means through which it's achieved, but it's not the building and it's not the institution. It's you and God. And that's the beauty of it, So I get it. I get it perfectly. Brandon, what was your, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. It's that's what I was saying earlier about tools, right? And one of the things that there are a lot of things in the Catholic Church that intersect with Western mystery tradition in terms of ritual.
Well, they were all priests that created the Western mystery tradition.
Right.
They were. Tarot cards were little instruction cards at one point. They're one of the oldest tarot decks. Is like there's images of the life of Jesus on it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And here, I'll show you. This is I'm not getting reimbursed or paid or anything. In fact, I bought this deck myself. But this is one of my favorite decks to work with.
Influence
and this
of
is
the
one
Angels.
of the things that opened me to understanding the angelic forces that were asking to be a part of my practice. Like, hey, listen, James, like, can we come in? It's a beautiful deck, and so it comes at it obviously from a perspective. But even if you look at the Rider-Waite-Smith, and this is something that I talk to people in the shop all the time, who have reservations about using tarot and its intersection, being potentially evil or connecting to something dark, is the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck it's so replete with Christian iconography that I find it more difficult to help people who aren't Christian or who aren't really devout in their Christianity or have trauma associated with, Christian beliefs. I have more difficulty trying to help them connect with the deck than, because of all of the Christian iconography that's in there. The whole point of tarot is not to tell you your future or to connect you with bringing in dark forces. It's to help connect you to the divine. It's to help you see what's happening and bring you closer to an enlightened spiritual path.
Beautifully said. That's beautifully said. And it's actually, it's profoundly accurate. Let's just say that. I think, people think tarot, they think fortune tellers, they think, psychics on the main road, that you pull in and you get like some kind of fortune told about, this person you're going to
call them neon psychics.
Yeah, neon psychics. Yeah. Or the fairs, the Renaissance festivals always have a few psychics, and they're not typically very good. At least in my experience, they weren't very good. I actually went to one once, and they were reading directly from the book that came with the cards.
Wow.
I'm paying you $40 to read to me. Oh, that's really nice. I could have bought the deck for $40, Brandon, you said you had a second question for James.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious because, like, when I started investigating, I got a lot of criticisms. So my question would be, how do you respond to critics who view angelic communications as incompatible with their understanding of religious teachings?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's also not something that I've encountered yet. So I have to kind of like imagine how I would respond to that. And I suppose, at the risk of repeating myself, it would be in a similar way that is a few things. One, I don't want to defend myself, right? I don't feel like I'm in like I need to be defending my spiritual connection with angelic guides or with God or whatever it may be, right? Or however I connect with the divine.
Sure.
If somebody's really interested in understanding, so that's the first thing. If somebody's challenging me, if it comes at it from the perspective of challenging me, then I don't really want to engage. But if they're really curious, then it comes down to a lot of the things that I've already said. What is the purity of intent? What is my experience? Like, what are the teachings? Tell me what the teachings are that you feel are incompatible. And how are they incompatible? Because my experience with spirituality and connecting with God is not, it's not through books or through the interpretation of man, right? That informs it. And like Father Chris said, in terms of like I love that term, the noble tradition, it's important, it counts for something, but it's not the pinnacle of my faith, and it's not the pinnacle of my practice. So if somebody can you restate the question just so I make sure that I'm answering it?
Yeah. How do you respond to critics who view angelic communication as incompatible with their understanding of religious teachings?
So yeah, so if it's a critic who has an agenda, then I'm not going to engage. But if it's somebody who is really curious, then I would want to know, like, what is that incompatibility? Because I don't see the incompatibility.
Yeah, I think in fairness to you, James, it's more of a question they should ask a person from their own tradition more than.
Yeah. I mean, because I was just thinking about that. You know, one of the benefits I think you have, James, and you said you've never encountered it, so you'd have to think about how would you answer it if you did. I think one of the benefits you have with, you know, working with the institutions you work with and working in this particular arena of the metaphysical realm, you're going to naturally be kind of immersed with people who are very open-minded and willing to learn new things, whereas, you know, maybe something that Brandon's realm, it's going to be far more closed. You know, he's out there in Tennessee, you know, under the oppressive dogma of the Bible Belt. You know,
I have family that is not a part of this world, so I get it.
There you go. You know, so yeah, I mean, I would think though that, you know, it helps to be. I mean, I think that was the refreshing breath of fresh air for me when I used to be more actively involved in the metaphysical side of things. It was not always nice, the open-mindedness and the willingness and to learn new things. The part I didn't like was you couldn't always reel everyone in. So a lot of the things that you talk about, you know, that sort of give foundation and structure, which is important. I think sometimes in the metaphysical realm, you have people that don't want any structure of any kind. And I don't know if you can really go very far that way. I mean, you certainly, you know, you take the mundane pursuit of learning a field of study. You know, anyone can pick up medical books and read them, but, you know, without the structure of medical school, you're not going to be able to practice. No one's going to take you seriously, and you're not going to ever become a person that can be truly trusted. The structure makes that possible. It makes you safe. And I think sometimes open-minded people forget that, you know, we need structure. And unfortunately, people in the church think that structure is the be-all and end-all of all things, and then that just leads to closed-mindedness. You need a little bit of both. You know, you need to be balanced. And I think everything that you've shared with us tonight, James, and I mean, not just because I view you as a friend, but also because I see you, you know, as a person who is one of the lights of the world, you know, really well-intentioned, is out there and sharing wisdom and guiding people spiritually in your own department, people that would never probably ever come to me, and yet getting great guidance in that sense. And you're balanced, you know, you're structured enough that you're not off the deep end, but you're also open-minded enough that you're not limiting yourself, and you're not limiting others or forcing others to become limited. That's the biggest problem I have with Christianity, is that it's not a limiting religion. It never was supposed to be that. It became that.
No, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. It became that, but it doesn't need to be. I mean, this is what part of the Nicolaitan Church.
It only becomes that in the minds of people. I mean,
it does.
You know, I mean, what you're trying to describe is the interaction between, you know, knowledge on a website or on paper, and being alive and experiencing things in real time. I mean, that's the interaction that we're describing.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, the word of caution is, of course, where, like I said before, if what we want to do with our lives is a complete rupture from that which has gone before, that's when we should have a great deal of caution, you know, because generally, like, yeah, we're all individual, and we live in an age of rampant individualism. Like, you know, our individualism is everything to us, you know, which is silly, actually, in my opinion. But because it's just a truism that we are, of course, ourselves, but we're part of something much bigger. And when we try to isolate ourselves from everybody else and everything else that's gone before, we end up completely turned in on ourselves and lost and narcissistic and egocentric and depressed. So that's why we've got
nihilistic and anarchistic, and
exactly. Yep. And we're describing all of the problems that Western countries are facing because we've gone too far down that road, because we're far too self-important, actually. You see, we talked about humility.
We've lost sight of the social contract, you know.
Well,
and now I'm going into philosophy, but it's you know, in Rousseau, but that's one of the foundational tenets of my. It's part of my faith too. We have a social contract. We have an obligation, not only to ourselves, but to our fellow human beings and to our fellow creatures and to the planet. We're not isolated.
Do, but we don't. But just to push back on Rousseau, who I think is a criminal. In fact, I know he's a criminal. Have a look at Rousseau and his children. Just a little Google search for people to have.
That's how you really feel.
I don't know enough. I'm just focusing on the social contract.
I'm about to redeem you, James. Don't worry.
Okay, thanks.
It wasn't Rousseau that came up with those ideas. It was Jesus. Love God, neighbor, and self. And Rousseau is utterly wrong about you know, man is born free and everywhere in chains. This is garbage. You know, original sin is a real thing. And so, sorry, I've read these things quite deeply. I like philosophy.
Don't apologize. It's good.
So
you're making my eyes burn from it's making me laugh too hard.
Sorry. Well, I think between them, Rousseau, Nietzsche, Marx, not them, but the people who've placed too much emphasis on them as opposed to other philosophers that are around, have pretty much created the destruction of the university and the this hyper focus on hyper individuality, which has been so devastating. So you end up, you know, notwithstanding, you know, Rousseau's idea of a social contract, like I say, I'm critiquing his approach to what he means by that, not the fact, as you said, what the essence of you said, which is that we are in fact, you know, and again, I go back to biblical principles. It's not good for man to be alone. We're not supposed to be alone. We don't exist in isolation. And even the most miserly person who thinks, oh, you know, I've made my own living and I've got my own money and I look after myself and I don't rely on anybody else. You know, you think, okay, did you make your own clothes? Did you grow the cotton? You know, it doesn't take long to realize that is based on a tissue of lies and nonsense. And so no, I completely agree with the essence of what you said, James, which is that we are in fact part of something far bigger. And by the way, that's what makes life worth living. Because then we have to engage in negotiation and in, you know, other things. Yeah, there's difficulty in relationships, but they're also fulfilling. A friendship is a great thing. A business contract is a good thing. You know, all of these things are positives where we have to actually acknowledge, again, it's back to humility, that we cannot rule our own lives, that we can't exist on our own, that we've not, you know, been projected from the universe. This is my objection to Rousseau. Projected from the universe as some you know, tabula rasa being. It's not true. We are connected to everything that went before. The wonderful thing about Christianity, by the way, just as and you'd expect me to be in favor of it, is to say that although Rousseau's wrong, because we're born into original sin, we're born into all of the stuff that's gone before, good and bad. The wonderful thing about Christianity is there's a remedy that says you're baptized, and therefore the chains that you're born into, you're released from. So it's actually the reverse of Rousseau. We're born in chains, and Christianity sets us free from that. Now, that again, that's not to say that individual Christians or groups of Christians have got that very wrong, or have taught something which has been destructive as a result of that. So I hope I've kind of clarified my Rousseauian hatred.
If we can't be challenged, then what's the point? Like you said,
you got to have your Father Chrisism for the night, and that was it. You know.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
If you clip them and put them together and put them out on YouTube, people would think I was some insane tyrant.
Honestly, I mean, that would be a very funny video. Brandon, you should sometime gather all the Father Chrisisms and put them into one video. That would be great.
I'm going to need to get paid for that. That's going to take a long time.
It will take a long time. It will. It'll be a 10-hour video.
I must decrease.
Well, James, we're almost at the end here. I want to give a chance for you to, say whatever final thoughts you might have on this, and also maybe ways in which people can reach out to you, or any events that you've got going on that you'd like to report. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I just I do the work that I do because I enjoy doing it. And it's the first time in my life where I really feel happy and fulfilled in the work that I do, in every corner of it. And so I feel really grateful. It's not, I'm not making a lot of money at it, which is fine, but as long as I can make enough to keep doing the work, that's all I really want to do. And my goal is, when I'm reading for people, is to help them and to step out of the way, to deliver the message, and to help empower people. One of the things I wanted to mention that I don't remember what sparked the idea, but or made me think of this. I tell my clients all the time, I'm not telling you your future. I'm not reading your fortune. I'm showing you a path. And in this moment, it may be your most likely path, given everything that you are and you've done and you think and in up to this moment. But you have free will, and you have the ability to make decisions to either draw this closer in or build on it so that it becomes more powerful to you if it's something that looks good or is a positive aspect for you in your life. If it's something that you want to avoid, or if it's something negative, you have the free will to be able to make decisions to avoid it or to lower the impact of it if it's inevitable, right? So because there are forces that act upon us that we don't have control over, right?
Sure.
But we can control how we react to things. And so I think it's, and not only do we have free will in looking at a reading of any kind, but the people that are in our lives and all of the people of the world also have free will and can be making different decisions that can affect the outcome of something. So all you're getting is a glimpse. And if you're getting a glimpse into a future, which is a potential path, it's really a reflection of the present, because it's where you are and what you're looking at in your future, right? So I want people to come out of a reading, and I don't care if it's a reading with me or if it's a reading with you or anybody or a neon psychic or a roadside psychic, because listen, I've gone to some of them. I will go to them because I will go get a reading from anybody because I want to know, how do people approach this? What are they doing?
It is fun. That's why I do it too. That's why I do it too.
Right?
Yeah.
And some of them are good.
Yeah.
or maybe they had a good night. I don't know. I have bad nights, but we're human. But my point is that I don't care who is doing the reading. I want people to feel empowered, and I want people to approach divinatory practices, whether it's scrying or casting or tarot work, as a tool of empowerment and insight. That's its greatest strength, and how it can connect you. How do we get that power and strength? We draw from the divine that builds our power, trying to connect to reach and strive to emulate what is above and bring that down below into integrate in our own selves. That's really the point of it. And then how that spreads out to other people and how that empowers and helps other people around us. If we're not building people up, then what's the point? If we're only trying to build ourselves up, we're not building ourselves up. We're building a Tower of Babel within our own soul.
Yeah.
And that's pointless, right? So if we're not building up ourselves and those around us, then we're not serving ourselves, we're not serving society, we're not serving God. And that's what I want people to come away from anything that I do or anything that people like me do.
Well, James, it's been wonderful, and can't wait to do this again next season. Brandon will be in touch, and so will we. We'll definitely see about getting out there to see you guys. And thank you for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. Father Chris, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
JamesJudeTarot.com, under events, that's where you can see what I have upcoming. You asked me about that.
Oh, yes.
I sometimes forget to plug myself.
No worries. No worries. Thank you again, James. Father Chris, thank you. Brandon, thank you. And a big thank you to all of you out there for joining us this evening on tonight's episode of Vestiges After Dark. Without you, this show would be nothing. You are the audience, and we do this because we care. We care about you, and we hope to enrich you with a new and perhaps better understanding of the world around you. That's what this is all about. After all, we want to improve, right? Ourselves and each other. But next week, we will be answering questions about Catholicism. Brandon has compiled a very exhaustive list. It's on the Nicoland Network. You can read it. There's about 47 questions. Yeah, that's next week. It's Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I will see you out there in the ether. God bless everybody.